Hello and welcome back to Tips and Time Savers. I'm Danny Rocks, and this is part 2, the concluding part of my series where I demonstrate how to use structured formula references in both Excel 2007 and in Excel 2010. There are some subtle differences between both versions. Alright, let's come over here, and in Excel 2007 I'll do a brief recap of part 1. You're probably familiar with a data range with clearly defined header labels, and when we want to create a formula we refer to specific cells. Now when we write a formula, in the high majority of cases we make relative references to cells, which makes it easy to refer to a cell, in this case in this row, and then when we copy down, the reference in row 4 becomes the reference in row 5. Now over here I copied the core information. I took the labels and the information from the date, customer, unit shipped, and invoice total. I didn't carry over the calculation. Over here I converted this into a structured reference, into an Excel 2007 table. I can tell that because I get a new contextual tab up here, table tools for design, so I could easily change the style of the table, and I also recommend to go through and give your table a name. I use the name Danny in this case rather than a generic table 1, table 2. So now watch what happens when I go to add in a field. I want to perform the calculation to get the average selling price for the units on each invoice. So you see, when we add a field to a table, automatically the style gallery gets picked up, the alternate row shading, automatically the drop-down filters get added in, and the scope, the definition of the named table range Danny, gets automatically expanded. And this time when I run and write the formula, the structured formula references when I point to a cell, and I strongly recommend that you point rather than actually type in. It looks strange the first time you look at it. What I'm doing when I click on the cell, I'm not really clicking on cell J4, I'm clicking inside the name table, Danny, in this row. And in Excel 2007, this row cell referencing or structured formula is hash sign this row. So in this row, take the invoice total, and I'll put in the divide by operator and click to point to this reference. And again, notice the name of the table using this row style of referencing in the unit ship field. The real magic occurs when we come up and we click to enter it, because the formula gets copied all the way down. And I have several hundred rows here in this table. Here's also the autocorrect options menu over here. Many people miss this. So if I wish, I could undo that, or I could stop automatically creating a copy, and I can control the other autocorrect options. Now, let me switch over here to Excel 2010 and show you the difference. Once again, I added in the average, and notice that when I double click over here, instead of having that clumsy equals the name of the table and the hashtag this row reference, we have the structured reference in Excel 2010 with the @ symbol. So it's a much easier, it's a much streamlined, in my opinion, way to make those structured formula references over here in Excel 2010. Again, compare this with how we make structured references in Excel 2007. It's a much longer formula. Alright, now what I want to do is I want to show you some other ways that we can perform calculations within tables. So over here I have a table 2. I decided not to change the name, so it's the default name that came up in sequence, table 2. Over here I added a field in here, and I used the sum function. Now remember, I'm in Excel 2007, so I have the hashtag this row. What if I wanted to change this to average, let's say? And now I want to use the average function. I always begin typing my functions in lowercase. And in Excel 2007, Excel 2010, we have what's called Formula or Function AutoComplete. So highlight the function that you wish and then use the Tab key, which capitalizes the name of the function and adds in the left parentheses. what I want to do is I want to just drag through. And again, you see the references and the colon in between. Remember, I'm using a function, the average function. So before I can hit enter, I have to match the left parentheses with the right parentheses. Now watch what happens when I use Control Enter. You see the formula gets carried all the way across. Something else that's really interesting, if I add another row, if I expand the scope of my structured table by adding in another row, and I'll just put in some phony numbers. You see how the function over here gets automatically carried down. So it's a really terrific way to streamline your work. However, there are some possibilities for error. So for example, over here I have another table. Now I cleared out all the values here just so I could perform a percentage of total calculation. So I want to refer to the value over here in table 2 in this row. I'm going to stress this again. In this row. That's how we're using our structured formula references with a table. So in this row, go into the Q1 field and again stay within this row and stay within this table. Of course, I could refer to a different table if I wish, but the key element would be in this row. And I want to then take the total of, well, I don't want the average really. What I want to do is I want to come back here and change this to total. And I want to make sure that I'm using sum, and I want to make sure that I have copied this over, right parentheses. You see how that changes. Alright, so over here I have that, and when I come up here and say, okay, that's exactly what I want, notice again how it gets copied down. If you don't see it, use the auto correct options to auto complete it. Now watch what happens when we click over here. We get an error, and when we double click in here, well, yeah, it did automatically increment Q1 from the first formula and made it Q2. Look what it did over here. Instead of moving it over here into a blank, structured references actually wrap around. They stay within the table. So it went over here to the first field over here, products. Well, it's easy enough to correct. The key here to correcting it is to make sure that you highlight only the text for the name. Leave the left and the right bracket in place. We'll just change this to total, and now I'll hit Control Enter, and again you see how that gets copied automatically down. So you could either just copy it over and then go up here and do your editing either in the cell or up here in the formula bar. But remember, when you're making your correction, correct just the text over here. So you want to be sure that your left and your right brackets, which is what we use with structured formula references, remain in place. And the beauty is, of course, that it gets copied automatically down. Now, when we're making a reference outside the table, what I did over here is I did something similar, but this is not set up as a table. Once again, you're going to be referring to the table. And what I strongly recommend that if you're going to be doing this sort of thing, come up here and have a model. So I like to say point to your cell references when you're using structured references, but nevertheless, if you still want to go through and do it by hand, you see when I put an apostrophe in front, now I can copy this as text. So I'll have a working model down here. So what I could do over here is I could follow this model. Equals table 2. Now again, you see with function AutoComplete, you have the names of the tables and any other name references over here. What's going to be important is that you pay attention to the brackets. So you see I have a left bracket over here, and now what I want to do is I want to refer to the this row, and again use tab to move that through, and be again careful with your brackets, and you separate the name of the table by a comma to then refer to the name of a field. But that will only come up in function AutoComplete when you use the brackets. So let me now switch back over here into Excel 2010, and again I'm going to come over here and show you how the formulas are greatly simplified. I'm once again doing the same thing, referring to Q1 and dividing it by the total. but instead of having to use the clumsy hashtag this row, the @ symbol is this new streamlined way that we refer to a reference in a formula in this row. And once again, you could come over here, and if you're going to write the formulas, make sure that you have a model. So point to it first. Over here in the formula bar, I'm going to add in a parentheses first, so I'm sorry, an apostrophe, so I can make a copy of it, have that down here to serve as my model, and of course remember to come back here and remove that first character as the parentheses. So if I wish, I could come over here and function autocomplete equals and begin typing. So the more that you type, the more that you narrow it down, and use the tab key to move that over. Pay attention to the brackets that we have. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to have this row. So just click over here, use tab, and you see how that automatically gets added in. Put in the left bracket, and in this case we want Q1, and I use tab again, close that off with a right bracket and another right bracket. So you see how that matched up, and then divide by, and once again begin typing. So I won't finish that off. You see how you can use the pointing method, which is the easiest, or if you are referring to values that are in this row, you can use the function autocomplete. So that wraps up this series, and just a quick reminder that I have 6 new products available on my brand new shopping cart, shop.thecompanyrocks.com. Master Excel in Minutes, 90-minute focused in-depth instruction available either on DVD or to download versions for Excel 2003, Excel 2007, Excel 2010 if you want to master pivot tables in 90 minutes of video instruction. And I will look for you in the next lesson.